Hello, this is Scott Montgomery of the Small Town Mercer. Welcome to part two of my Baltimore video. So I'm going to play a short film clip about, I'm going to compare and contrast Baltimore with a town in the Netherlands. So I did a video a while back on the VOC and I did some more research and I found a good comparison to Baltimore. So I'm going to show you that video now. And it's a little clip and then I'm going to talk about it afterwards. So without further ado, here's a clip that I want to show you about the Netherlands.
Nation's total income? Well, to answer that question, we actually have to look at the side that normally gets the least attention: the poorest households. Unlike income, where the least you can earn in a given year after taxes is $0, your net worth can be negative. For example, someone with huge student loan debts that doesn't own a house or a car or has minimal savings might have a negative net worth. Now, in the Netherlands, this isn't so much of an issue. Schooling is heavily subsidised, but that doesn't mean that people don't take on other types of debt. In fact, they seek out debt on an even larger scale, through a home loan. Now, to viewers in most countries, getting a home loan requires saving up a deposit so that you own a portion of the property. Most banks around the world would like you to put at least 20% or at a bare minimum 5% down so that you have skin in the game and will be more likely to pay back that mortgage. This means that if you own a home, even if you have a big mortgage on it, you still probably have a positive net worth because your house is an asset and it is worth more than the liability of the home loan. So, as long as you don't have any other debts or the value of the property hasn't depreciated, you should be in the green. This is not the case in the Netherlands though, where borrowers can, and in fact are, encouraged to borrow over 100% of the value of their home as a mortgage. The National Mortgage Guarantee is a government program that insures bank loans on homes. So, if the borrower doesn't repay the bank and the bank can't make all of the money it needs back from repossessing the home, oh well, it can just get a check from the government for the difference, essentially making home loans completely risk-free. This is actually accelerated by the fact that mortgage repayments in the Netherlands are tax deductible. What that means is that if you earn €100,000 in a year, but you are paying €40,000 in interest to the bank on your home loan, you would only pay tax as if you were earning €60,000. This does two things to our wealth inequality metric. For starters, it skews the influence of those high taxes. If people can claim significant deductions on high incomes by having large mortgages, then it doesn't really matter what the tax rate is because it can just be redirected into building up a real estate portfolio.
Greetings, welcome back. So here I have on the board what I wanted to talk about in today's video. So sorry, I dropped my camera stand. I had to fix it. So anyway, during that video. But anyway, here's what I want to do. I want to compare Baltimore, Maryland to Eindhoven, which is in the southeastern portion of the Netherlands, away from the coast, towards the German, Belgian, Luxembourg, and Netherlands border region area. Anyway, it's in that vicinity, and it's in the province of North Brabant. So it's a very similar town to Baltimore. It doesn't have the population of Baltimore. It's about 350,000, but it's been increasing over the years. Baltimore, on the other hand, has been decreasing. All right. So what we're going to have here is kind of a comparison. And the reason I liked Eindhoven is because it is a traditional manufacturing town. It's also a pretty good agricultural producer. It produces about 15% of the agricultural goods that are produced in the Netherlands, and about 3% of the workforce works in agriculture in this area, as opposed to practically zero over here. So let's make a comparison here. So as you can see, the economics, in Baltimore we had 21% unemployment, Eindhoven 4%. By the way, the average worker makes about $58,000 a year in Baltimore, and 54,000, and that's U.S. equivalent wages, in Eindhoven. And 83% white collar, 17% blue collar in Baltimore. This one I had to estimate because I had to count up all the industries that are traditionally white collar jobs because they list things in industry. They don't really list things as white collar, blue collar. But I had an estimate of about anywhere from 67 to 73% are white collar workers, and about anywhere from 27 to 33% are blue collar workers. So about a third. Um, so when what was I going to say? Oh, yes. So in estimating these, I realized that you're going to see more of a balance when we get to education as to how jobs are filled. And so it's going to be a little bit easier because of a lesser population and the fact that more people are college educated to fill those white collar and blue collar jobs, and there are more high school graduates. So the blue collar jobs are going to be there for them. There's more of them than there are in Baltimore. So housing, let's go to housing, and this is the big issue here. 19% unoccupied, almost 20%. One in five houses in Baltimore are vacant. And it's somewhere between 4 and 5%. I looked at two or three different measures in the last couple of years, and I got them somewhere in between 4 and 5. It's not as high as 5, but it's at least 4. And housing ownership, 40% in Baltimore, and about 71%, a little under that, in Eindhoven. So when you look at this metric of the houses that are occupied, it's about 50-50 in Baltimore. Whereas here it's about 70, I don't know, 75-25, I guess, if you were to look at the remaining. Let's just look at it this way. 40% of people in Baltimore own a home, or 40% of homes in Baltimore have an owner. 60% of homes in Baltimore do not have an owner. It's about 70-30 in Eindhoven. About 70% of homes have an owner there and 30% do not. I guess that's a better way to look at it. Education, 52% of people in Baltimore do not graduate high school. 48% do. 20% of people in Eindhoven do not graduate high school, but 80% do. College graduate, 18% only in Baltimore, even though they've got one of the finest universities in all of America, and a couple of others that are, Loyola and University of Maryland, Baltimore, and I think University of Baltimore. So they've got a few universities there. Eindhoven has a couple of universities as well, and a couple nearby, but yet they managed to get about a 33%. Now, this total is for the whole province of North Brabant. Eindhoven might be a little higher or a little lower than that, so you can assume it's anywhere between 30 and 37%. There's a couple of towns there that I saw some anecdotal evidence, which means somebody who lives there claims this, but that a couple of the towns there are around 37% college graduation rates. So I'm not sure if they're referring to Eindhoven in particular. Neither of those that I saw live in Eindhoven, they live nearby. So I don't know. Maybe that's a North Brabant number, which is the whole province. There's about 4 other decent sized cities besides Eindhoven in that province. So they have about 5 altogether. All right. But the main thing I wanted to point out is there's more of an economic balance in the Netherlands. All right. Um, and this is something I want to talk about. Here in the United States, we're moving more and more and more to office work, white collar work, um, computerized type work, or similar to that anyway, or management type work or financial type work. But anyway, it's going to involve computerized type of work anyway. And the Netherlands is kind of going a little in that direction as well. But they have a more economically balanced um, economy. So And just to give you an illustration of that, um, if you go back 100 years and you look at the top 20 or top 25 companies in the United States and in Maryland, the only companies that were on the top 20, top 25 companies as far as net wealth in the United States, you're only going to see a couple of them, and they're both oil companies, Exxon and Mobil. All right? And I think Chevron, too, is up there somewhere. But in the Netherlands, um, most of their companies have been in the top 10 or top 20 in the last 100 years. So, especially if you look at their top 10 or top 15, you're going to see names like Shell, the company, there's a holding company that owns KLM Airlines, Unilever, Lever soap and all those Lever products. And I forget what the dish soap is called and so forth and so on. But they're like a Procter and Gamble type company. They always have been. Um, then you have ING. Everybody's heard of. Now ING did not exist as a company in the 1920s and or the 1950s. That came about as a conglomeration or as uh, um, uh, amalgamation of several different companies that came together to form ING, sorry. But those companies were around in the 1920s and the 1930s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And they were in the top 25, top 50 companies in the Netherlands. So when they all came together and they merged with a couple of other companies from outside of the Netherlands, they became ING. So those companies were around and they were in the top financial companies. Just like Exxon and Mobil are one company today, they were two companies back then. So, but they were both in the top indices. All right. So, Philips. Have you ever heard of Norelco products? Philips makes those. Philips makes a lot of electronic stuff. Um, they're a Dutch company. They've been around since the 1890s. And who else? Who did I leave out? Um, well, anyway, there's a couple of other companies that also, well, obviously Shell Oil. Shell Oil, if you go to Jiffy Lube or if you go to, if you buy Pennzoil products or Quaker State products, those are all owned by Shell. So Shell's been around also for more than 125 years. And, there's a couple of other industries that do business here in the United States that we would be familiar with. Okay, so, but they're a more economically balanced economy. 25% of their economy is, I think, or 15, 20% of their economy is agriculture still. The United States produces a lot of agriculture, but only about 2% of the population engage in agriculture. It's a little bit higher than that in the Netherlands. The Netherlands also exports a lot of agriculture throughout Europe. 10 or 12% of them are in natural gas or oil or other energy type products. You'll find that that's also true in the United States, but the Netherlands has 17 million people. Okay? So now I want to get to the economy, and I want to show you the differences between how the Dutch practice economics versus how the United States does it. And there's a few other differences, but I'm going to point out to the top three. And that's why I played the video, because I wanted to show you the different philosophies. Now, I played the video and it discussed the nuts and bolts of the philosophy. Now, some of that information in that video is dated and some of it is not accurate, but the principle is still there. And that's what I wanted to get about the principle. And what are the principles? Well, here in the United States, we pursue money, right? Oops, did I? Boy. I'm trying to write so good I don't spell right. So we're going to go pursuit of money. In the Netherlands, it's pursuit of assets. Okay, number 2. Sorry. Government assistance. In the pursuit of money. I'm going to say the pursuit of money. All right. Government assists in the pursuit of money when economic conditions are not favorable. Okay. This is also true here. The government does assist in money similarly to this, but the people, because of habits, have savings. And as you could see in that video, if they don't have enough savings, they have an asset to borrow against so they can acquire it. So the government is not as much on the hook. So they don't need very high levels of stimulus or high levels of unemployment. They put most of their money into their pension system so that when you retire, there's more money in that than there is in, let's say, government assistance or unemployment, high unemployment claims. All right? And then number 3, and this is more of a philosophical thing, and this is going to be different. You know, the government is responsible for the good economy, right? For a good economy. And how that works is, when times are bad, the government is encouraged to stimulate or so forth. When the economy is good, taxation, higher taxation is incurred, higher taxes, we'll just say. Or conversely, when times are good, we lower taxes to encourage savings. So you can either raise or lower taxes, depending on what the philosophy is. If the country is not doing so well, we tend to lower taxes to make the economy go up. And when it's good, we tend to raise them to some degree, and that's always a debate, okay? But in the Netherlands, they always have high taxes, as you saw. So the government has less of a role. What they tend to do is the government will stimulate, but taxes don't really change that much. So the government will stimulate when times are bad, but taxes don't change very much. What changes? And there's a reason why there are high taxes. There are high taxes in the Netherlands to generate behavior. It generates a type of behavior that they want to encourage. Now, the Dutch have been practicing capitalism for over 400 years. They pretty much invented modern finance and modern stock markets and all of that they invented, and we still use their techniques today. But this is something that they use, and they use it differently than most other countries, virtually all other countries. They use high taxes so that you put your money towards assets instead of always pursuing higher and higher revenues of money. Like I showed you earlier when I gave you that illustration, people in Baltimore, the ones that are working, make more of an income than the people do in Eindhoven. But yet in Eindhoven, they have a lot more ownership of property and assets. So you're going to see them purchase houses. That's the number one asset. An asset is something that's more valuable than money, so that you can generate money from that asset. In previous videos, I've told you that gold and now Bitcoin are assets. These are things you don't sell. These are things you hold and borrow against if you need to. And they increase in value every year, every year, every year. I want you to think about something. If your house is worth $500,000 today, is money gaining value, or are assets gaining value? In other words, do you expect your house to be worth $250,000? Let's say it's a $500,000 home. Do you expect it to be worth $250,000 5 years from now? If so, that means money is gaining value. Let's say you bought your house with $500 worth of gold 10 years ago. Here's the gold. Here's the house. Is gold worth $500 an ounce today? Or is it worth closer to $1,500 to $1,800? Did I say 500,000? Anyway, $500 today, is it worth less than $500 today? Or is it worth $1,500 to $1,800 today? Gold is more valuable today. Rarely does it become less valuable years from now. I'm not talking in the short term. Years from now. Okay? Housing. Housing is the number one asset. People realize that. They've come to accept that. So is your house going to be worth $250 when it's worth $500 today? It will be if we have a major depression, but not because money is gaining value. So do you expect a loaf of bread to be 5 cents again? Do you expect to go up and pay 25 cents for a gallon of gas in the next 5 years? Because money's being more valuable? Money's not being more valuable. So this is why they encourage this, because then the government is more profitable. Okay? Instead of pursuing money all the time, whereas money becomes less and less valuable faster. In the Netherlands, the euro actually has more of a value. So even though in the Netherlands, like I said, let's say you make 58,000 a year in the United States, your taxes are what, about 20%, 21%, 22%? In the Netherlands, 54,000 equivalent dollars, it's about 50,000 euros, I think, is going to net you about a 34% tax in the Netherlands. So, but guess what? If you have a house that's $300,000, like he said in the video, and you owe a couple $100,000, now today I think it's like 46%, because this 100% thing was costing the government money. They were getting in the red financially, so that's come down since that video was made. So I think it's 46% today. You can take 46% of whatever that number you owe is off of your taxes. So as long as you have a mortgage, you can take that percentage off of your income. So it's like you're paying 30% on a $22,000 income as opposed to a $50,000 income. So you see how that works. So even the wealthier people, the main emphasis of that video was the wealth disparity in the Netherlands. Well, the reason that 100,000, let's say a person making the equivalent of $100,000 in the Netherlands can take off, let's say $40,000, $46,000. Now he's only taxed as if he earned $56,000. So he's making out a lot better than the person making $50,000 who's paying taxes on $22,000. But the goal of that is that everybody has more money in their pocket, and their industries and their businesses are kept intact. Do you see that? That's why those companies are still around. They don't need to go to some tax haven. They don't need to go and merge with some other company to make more money because this is the pursuit of money. You know, look at the US. The top 20, 25 companies in 1920, like I said, one or two are left. The rest of them have been replaced or merged or not even companies anymore. In the Netherlands, some of them have merged. Very few of them have gone out of business or are worth nothing today. Most of them are still there. But this system still raises a lot of revenue, but it does preserve the wealth and it does preserve the companies. You know, the Netherlands, 10% of the working population owns 60% of the assets, and that's similar here in the United States. But the difference is here, as you see in Baltimore, um, there are a lot more people suffering. In the Netherlands, I think only 8 or 7% of the population lives under the poverty line. In the United States, believe it or not, it's slightly below 10. It came down during the Trump years. But you're still looking at large swaths of major cities that have problems. In the Netherlands, it's smaller. It's not terribly noticeable, I think, especially in cities that are smaller in population. I think that number is only about 4 or 5% in Eindhoven. It's hard to tell in Brabant because they only do those numbers nationally. But that's what I believe it is anyway. So it's a lot better. Obviously, unemployment, only 4% of people are on that. So, so you see, this is a much better system. And so you're probably thinking, well, gee, Scott, what's this got to do with cryptocurrency? Are you trying to say that maybe they should use Bitcoin as an asset? And I'm here to tell you that no. I'm here to say that despite the Dutch having a much better economic system, despite the fact that they have high taxes, the government is still losing money. The, and all economies across the world are, even the ones that are really similar to the Netherlands. I'm thinking about making a similar video to because New Zealand did some things in the late 1970s and early 1980s to put their economy on similar footing. However, all economies, no matter how tight they are with their fiscal responsibilities, are all starting to lose money. And the reason for that is the money itself is not sound. And the reason it's not sound, the reason money is not sound all over the world is no matter what fiat currency you're talking about, all right, the fiat currency is losing value because it doesn't have a sound financial status. Governments are having to print more and more money to keep up with inflation. Inflation is rising, and that is because governments are more and more and more on the hook to produce money or currency, we call it, to prop up the weaknesses of the economic system, whether it's socialist or capitalist. Uh, the Dutch are a strictly capitalist society. Their, um, I should say, their socialist type leanings are really kept to a minimum because of all the tax breaks they give in asset acquisition. Okay? So, my argument is that cryptocurrency is going to be far more of an asset, no matter which ones you use. Bitcoin, I think, is going to be the gold. okay, or the house. I think someday Bitcoin might be more valuable than your house. Whereas other altcoins are going to be the spending money. I don't know which ones are going to survive. I don't care. Care if it's Ethereum or Cuckooberry or Polkadot, Cardano, or Stooge Coin, or any of those others. Okay, doesn't matter to me. You know, whatever. Just call it altcoin if you want to. But I think that's going to be our spending money. I think you're going to value altcoin in regards to Bitcoin. In other words, one Bitcoin is going to equal 1,000 altcoins, or 5,000 altcoins, or 10,000 altcoins, and maybe even 50,000 altcoins. And then you can break up your altcoin into a Bitcoin. All right? So that's how I think it's going to go. And I think those coins are going to be an asset, and the inflation is going to grow very little. Maybe you can produce a few more altcoins. Hopefully, because it's not centralized, you won't be able to produce very much of them. So prices will stabilize, incomes will stabilize, and then you're going to get behavior. So now you can't rely on somebody giving you money. You have to earn the money and save the money and use the money to increase your own wealth by investing. Investing in what? Well, investing in Bitcoin, investing in keeping your property up and nice. If you look at Baltimore, Baltimore has similar row houses. You saw the video in the Netherlands, you saw all those row houses. They look pretty nice. In Baltimore, they don't look so nice. As a matter of fact, if you go up near me, there's a city, Hagerstown, Maryland. A lot of row houses there don't look very nice. Okay? Because nobody owns them. Very few people own them. If that were to change, the behavior were to change, you'd see a much better city, and you wouldn't have the emphasis on high taxation of businesses with very few, very little ability to um, defer any of those taxes. So companies just go elsewhere. They're looking for money. They're not thinking about their business, their house as an asset. In the Netherlands, Shell and all these other companies are assets. They're not piggy banks looking to be raided so that you can get more money. So they're a generator of wealth. So anyway, thank you for watching. This has been Scott Montgomery of the Small Town Mercer. We'll see you next time.